vengeance.
Alright everybody, I know this review is up very late, but people are still talking about this movie and wanting me to review it, which I think says a lot about this movie. So here we go. Come for a ride with me and let's talk about The Batman. So as you might know, this movie stars Robert Pattison as Batman and Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. And basically the plot of this movie is they're going around trying to solve riddles from the Riddler. His evil plan is to cause havoc in Gotham City, and Batman's trying to put a stop to it by solving these riddles. Now, I think on paper, the plot of this movie may not seem like the most interesting idea, but it's its execution that makes it really worthwhile. It's all filmed like a really old noir film, you know? Everything is dark and grey, all the streets are littered with rubbish, it's raining all the time, everything's very gritty. Technically speaking, I think this film is a masterpiece. Like I say, the sets are just beautiful, but it's also shot very well as well. Every single scene has a very narrow depth of field, like all the background behind the characters is always blurred out, so you're always just focused on the characters. And the use of color is very few and far between. It makes the world that Batman takes place in feel very dark and serious, which I think works to the film's favor. I've heard some people say that they didn't really enjoy this aspect of the movie, that it was very dark and serious and kind of one note. And to that I would agree with, but I also feel that the movie ends on a real, almost hopeful high note in a way. And the sets get a lot lighter, it's finally daytime, you can see some sun. And that also reflects Batman's inner journey at the time, where he's feeling a lot more hopeful. The other thing that probably makes it very one note as well is the performances are very nuanced. They're very quiet, they speak in monotone voices, they're very gravelly, they're very bitter with the world, and for most of the movie, that's how they feel about the world. I mean, look, it's a noir detective story about detectives solving horrible crimes. I think it makes sense that they're sour about the world. But I do get it. I don't like being in sour situations for 3 hours either. Because of all the stylistic and technical aspects of this movie though, it makes it stand out from all the other superhero movies that have come out, and particularly the other Batman movies. For instance, I'm at university at the moment, and one of the degrees I'm studying is film. And I can really tell that this movie is going to be analysed the hell out of in some of my film classes. I remember watching the movie and thinking, oh boy, if I was taking that one specific subject again, they would be talking about the Batman for sure. There was just a lot of interesting and different creative choices that they made to other superhero movies. Like the director, you could tell, had a very clear vision for what he wanted the film to be, and I think he fully realised that, even if the script and story isn't the best part. Then there's two other technical aspects which I don't often talk about in my reviews, but I really appreciated about this movie, and that's the music and the costumes. I thought the music in this movie was brilliant. You know, every character has their own theme song, and anytime they're on screen, that's always playing. You know, the Batman sound with the drum-like sound. I'm not a musician, I don't know what instrument it is. And even the Riddler soundtrack with his operatic, I think it's called Ave Maria or something, it's often played at funerals. That was a very interesting choice that they chose that for whenever he appears on screen. It makes the Riddler seem almost like a religious figure, and like what he's doing is for a greater cause. And then speaking of the Riddler, I also mentioned costumes. Boy, the Riddler scared the heck out of me. And I've been reflecting on that a lot. And I think it is to do with his costumes, but also with how it's shot. Particularly his costume, he's wearing a mask. And lots of other villains you do see wearing masks. But the difference with this Riddler is that his costume, and his mask in particular, is actually a real mask. You could go out and buy this mask at a military store or whatever. Whereas a villain like Darth Vader, where are you going to buy that mask in real life? So it just makes the Riddler a lot more realistic and scary. You know, when he's actually doing his murders and creating these riddles, it feels a lot more real, and it really spooked me. The night after I saw this movie, I couldn't get to sleep until like 3 a.m. because I was terrified that when I closed my eyes, the Riddler was gonna stab me in the head and duct tape my face closed. And then Batman's costume as well. I reckon it's the best Batman costume they've ever had. Again, I particularly liked his mask, or his cowl, I guess you call it. And I think a mixture of Robert Pattison's face, the mask, and also the very dark contrast between black and white really highlights his eyes. You know, they always say that eyes are the window to the soul. And with this mask and his brilliant eyes and the dark contrast, you're immediately drawn to his very white eyes. It's very effective. One of the other big characters that everyone's always talking about with this movie too is Catwoman. And maybe I was just concentrating too much on Robert Pattison's eyes, but it doesn't feel like she was underdressed, you know. I don't think she had any cleavage, which was a nice change. And for me, I've never been a big Catwoman fan. I've always found her to be an overly sexualized mass, and to an extent I think that's a similar situation in this movie. I still think she's overly sexualized in a way, but the one thing that really got me about her character was this weird walk that she had, you know, tilted her hips up and down as she walked from side to side, one step in front of the other. Maybe she could have gone without that. My favorite scene in the movie is right at the start when all the villains are running around and they're setting up the world, and then the criminals look over and they just see shadows. Like they'll just have shots of just dark corners with ominous music, and there's no one even in the frame, but you can tell what these villains are feeling. It was a very character-driven movie, and you can tell with the use of the blurred background that they're just focusing on the characters and what these characters are feeling, more than something like the plot. It was a character-driven movie, not a plot-driven movie. And I get that characters are the main focus of this movie over plot, but I have to take a few points off for the plot. I mean, look, a lot of the plot is Batman going around trying to solve these riddles, trying to get to the bottom of this mystery, this crime. But I had a lot of trouble actually following along with all the clues. And there's a lot of characters that they mention but never actually show. Like someone called Maroni. Who the hell was that? We never see him. They talk about him. They never see him. And Falcone as well. They throw all these names around and they're very Italian sounding. There's not much difference between them. I just had a bit of trouble following along with the plot and the mystery and whatever. The Penguin bleeds into that as well. He's got like a Italian-American kind of accent in a way. Even all the cops have got Italian-American accents, it seems. It was very bizarre. And then I think that makes this movie feel a lot longer as a result. I mean, it's already like 3 hours long, but then when you can't even understand the plot, it makes it feel a lot longer. But what makes this movie worthwhile is that Batman still has a character arc. You know, he starts out this movie and he's full of rage and vengeance. He never actually refers to himself as Batman in this movie. He only ever refers to himself as Vengeance, and that's his name. I think that's very interesting. Compared to at the end of the movie, he's realized that instead of being a symbol for vengeance, he should be a symbol for hope. And I really understood that message and his change in perspective. And I think for me, that makes this film worthwhile. But yeah, overall, if you're a Batman fan, I think you're gonna really enjoy this movie. You know, it's very stylistic. It's a lot different to the other Batman movies. It's still got a brilliant character arc. I enjoyed this movie a lot, even though it did give me nightmares. I'm gonna give The Batman an 8 out of 10. There we are. I hope you enjoyed that film review. Finally got it up. Be sure to smash subscribe like Batman smashing criminals, and I'll see you in the next video.